Right, and we are live again, ready to kick off the next keynote. So as mentioned, we've got SAP, Marc Emert, the sales leader, Africa, SAP customer experience. It's going to be going through personalized, engaging interactions through the buying and delivery process. So Marc, welcome. Happy to have you. Can you put your camera on?
Good morning.
There we go, we can see you.
Lovely to chat. I'm going to just quickly share my screen. Welcome to the new normal. Okay, fantastic. So I always love these things. It seems like I'm talking to myself. Hopefully there are people out there listening. So thank you very, very much to TFL for the opportunity to quickly introduce myself. Correct, I am the sales leader for SAP Customer Experience. I have a keen interest in CX and all things CX related, particularly the use of data to drive personalization, to drive enriching, engaging experiences with customers. I spend far too much money and far too much time online. I think my wife tends to spend more. I have 10 years B2B and B2C e-commerce experience. But my greatest experience of all is my little lockdown COVID twin babies. I thought I'd share a little picture. So very proud of that. They're 1 year old as of yesterday. Without further ado, let me kick off. So the reality is that 63% of customers are more willing to engage with customers or businesses that deliver better experiences. Customer experience going forward will really be a de facto, the only de facto differentiator. Okay? Berkeley University took it a step further, and they're of the view that customers are 3 times more likely to remember the bad experiences than they are to remember the good ones. Okay, and going into the next normal, we're seeing a really significant change in behavior. One thing is clear that usage through digital channels will only exponentially increase. We're going to see a significant blur between physical and digital channels that will increase. Dinesh and the ordering guys were speaking about that a little bit earlier. Things like curbside pickup will be seen as the new normal. Online grocery delivery will continue to grow. Checkers are doing a phenomenal job. Woolworths and Pick and Pay through bottles are improving drastically on a daily basis. Social streaming mechanisms like Facebook are going to increasingly offer the ability for online shopping through those social channels. Facebook are actually offering weekly shopping events. You're seeing that increasingly with makeup brands and makeup businesses. And all of this is fundamentally changing how businesses engage with customers, how they fulfill, right from the cold chain to the end delivery. This is an interesting example of what Domino's in the US are doing. So for me personally, it's often a difficult decision around what toppings I want on a pizza. But to add further complexity, Domino's have in excess of 10 ordering mechanisms, the ability to order via Facebook Messenger, the ability to order via text message, the ability to order via Alexa, tweet, via my in-car Ford Sync, or via a smart TV. So there's increasingly amounts of complexity in terms of how I'm able to order a pizza. Domino's actually say, they released a statement last week that 75% of all their orders are done via those online channels. Compounding the complexity is you've got an increase in fulfillment options. So to my friends at Order In, what Deliveroo in the UK are doing are now delivering via speedboats to beaches in Brighton. Yandex in Russia are delivering with this little cool looking robot. There's a business in the US called eDoor, which is a solution to domestic parcel thefts. It's a little two-way door with built-in security and two-way cameras. Drones are going to be increasingly more prevalent. Right at the top far right-hand side of the screen is a provider called Cleverpod. So we've seen in South Africa these lockers, but Cleverpod is a little mini locker that you'd put on your grass, and it really removes that requirement of you being home for a delivery. You're seeing, and you will continue to see businesses, large multinational direct-to-consumer brands, to name a few, Unilever, Beiersdorf, and Red Bull, focusing on delivering direct to consumers. Traditionally, last mile fulfillment is something that they've never done, so they've had to adapt. You're seeing businesses like Bayern Munich with stadium attendances being significantly reduced because of COVID. They are now having to move to online channels as additional sources of revenue. But what becomes a key component and a key differentiator is the customer data. And a typical customer journey is, we learned in marketing 101, is awareness, interest, decision, action. That's no longer the case. They are highly fragmented. There are multiple different iterations of these journeys. But the key differentiator is businesses are able to gather data at all of these touch points about the customer, about the interactions, and those data touch points become really crucial differentiators in terms of providing the ability to deliver these really personalized, one-to-one, highly relevant engagements with customers. So that data becomes really, really powerful. Okay. So the reality is that only 36% of customers trust how brands use their data. Customers today demand to be known personally. They want to be known on their terms. And retailers or businesses, in fact, need to focus on collecting and mining this data and using this data to really drive these intimate engagements. Okay. Customers are also overwhelmed. I think we're overwhelmed with the sheer volume of marketing material, the sheer quantity, and the lack of quality, the lack of personalization. We're demanding more one-to-one engagements at scale. It has to be on my terms, whether it be searching for a product or a personalized interaction across the fulfillment process. Now, personalization goes a huge way to increasing revenue. What we're seeing is customers who personalize are seeing 5 times increase in terms of the average spend per customer. They're also seeing significantly higher retention rates. Okay. This is an interesting one, and the order in guys spoke to this a little bit, but customers like options, and these options aren't going away. They demand and want these really immersive shopping experiences with real people. That isn't going to disappear. But the digital shopping experience has really raised their expectations. If I'm logging on to Amazon, there's a plethora of information around a product, whereas that's kind of lacking in a physical store. And leading edge retailers are really ravenous to blend these two. They're now significantly more empowered in terms of providing customers with all of that information, regardless of where that interaction starts or ends. This is a great graph that I wanted to share because it talks towards the evolution towards customer experience leadership. And we'll talk to these in more detail shortly. But moving from really the status quo, being a multi-channel retailer, to being customer adaptive retailers and what that means. So it's fundamentally moving away from these siloed applications, these pockets of data spread across the organization, to really a customer experience platform. Okay, and as you move from multi-channel to these customer experience type relationships, you're moving towards that nirvana of customer experience leadership. Okay, so the first one is really where mainstream retail is and starts, multi-channel retail. They fundamentally have multiple channels that a customer can engage with. whether it be call center, whether it be digital, whether it be physical. It's largely independent channels, so the data is siloed. There are pockets of data, and customer is treated as an individual in those various engagement channels. So there's no consistent view of customer across those channels. The relationship with the customer is largely transactional. When the customer purchases or transacts, it's fundamentally the end of the relationship. As a result of that, you're always going to find loyalty issues. Okay. The next type of retail is omnichannel. Now, the real difference is multi-channel and omnichannel are two different things. They're not the same. But omnichannel provides the ability to have these multiple integrated channels. So if a customer is ordering online or walking into a physical store, the experience is the same. The pricing is the same. I think that's a huge challenge these days, walking into a physical store and going online, and you're going to see two different price points on the same product. So it's about removing that friction. It's about integrating the channels. It's about capturing that data, and readily acting on that data to deliver a really personalized engagement. You're going to hear a lot about the term side digital, and it's really about the integration of these digital and physical environments, whether it be a digital store or a physical shopping mall. IKEA are doing this quite well. So in their brochures, they have QR codes. Customer can take a picture of the QR code, and what it will do is bring up this immersive picture of a furniture or a piece of furniture, where a customer can see how that furniture will actually look in their house. Okay, it's a great example of blurring those two worlds. And what you're starting to see is a big shift away from just products and just transactions towards the customer. Okay, so customer adaptive retail is really the nirvana here. And what you're doing is you're expanding on omnichannel. You're expanding on the integration of these multiple channels, but you're offering adaptive experience-based, predictive, focus-based outcomes. So you're using technologies like artificial intelligence and machine learning to constantly analyze the landscape, analyze the customers, and make recommendations in real time. Okay, it's about tracking the customers in real time. It's about managing the supply chain and delivery models, and it requires innovation on all of the channels. Okay, it's fundamentally adaptive in nature, so it continues to adapt in real time, and dynamically changing based on the customer's needs. So this really is the nirvana. There are a couple of reasons why businesses are fundamentally failing at getting to this point. It could be things like functional silos, cultures not being fully aligned, missing technology platforms, so the data spread across the organization. Support centers not equipped to manage multiple interactions. But fundamentally, it's an organizational culture that's focused on sales and product, and puts that ahead of the customer. By 2025, these sort of models are going to become increasingly more prevalent and increasingly more important, because grocers and retailers are going to start using these insights to fundamentally create new business models, whether it be subscription services or pay-per-use or outcome-based models. So you're going to see a large shift from multi-channel retail, where a lot of retailers are today, and they're slowly moving towards omnichannel. But in a couple of years, the retailers that win are going to be the ones that focus on customer adaptive retail. Okay, so we refer to this as the experience gap. There's a huge gap between what CEOs believe they're delivering and what customers believe. 80% of CEOs believe they're delivering a great experience, and unfortunately customers, only 8% of them believe the same. Okay, and the reality is that in order to close this experience gap, customers need to be listened to, they need to be understood, and they need to be delivered. Okay, And there are two types of data which become quite important here. The experience data is, why are things happening? And the operational data is what's happening. And you need to ultimately combine these two sources of data. So if you look at a typical customer journey, I'm logging onto a website for the first time. I'm abandoning a shopping cart. An example of operational data is an abandoned shopping cart. An example of experience data is why have I left that shopping cart? Maybe the pricing, as an example, could be an issue. Okay. So what I'm doing throughout that customer journey is collecting the operational data and collecting the experience data to really have a true picture of the customer. And I'm doing it from multiple mechanisms, whether I'm collecting it from things like a smartwatch or an app or in store. And as a result of collecting that experience data, I'm really being powered by valuable insights. So, in real time, what are my CSATs? What are my NPS scores? Where am I winning? Where am I losing? With really rich data around the customer sentiment. Just some businesses who are doing this quite well, leading hotels of the world, they're gathering that experience data as soon as a customer logs onto a digital platform. What experiences are you looking for? Porsche in North America, as soon as a customer walks into a dealership, they're gathering the sentiment of tablets, and they're ingesting that experience data. Dish are a telco provider in the US, but they're doing it throughout the customer journey, right from the initial ordering of a product to fulfillment to installation. They're gathering and collecting that experience data throughout. So that was it. It's short and sweet. I hope you heard everything. Sherry-Ann, you mentioned I may have had some Zoom issues, but that's it from me. Any questions?